Today, we're diving into a powerful lesson from history, the absolutely catastrophic collapse of the world's first great era of globalization. Believe me, its failure holds some crucial warnings for the connected world we live in right now. That's a pretty stark statement, isn't it? I mean, we tend to think of our interconnected world as this unstoppable force, this one-way street. But history has a pretty harsh reminder for us. The very ties that bind us together can also break. And when they do, the consequences can be devastating. So, that's the big question, right? How does a world that's so interconnected just fall apart? It's a bit of a historical mystery, but it's one with incredibly important lessons for us today. And the answer, really begins in the world before the First World War. Okay, so let's set the scene. Picture the world before 1914. In a lot of ways, it was just as globalized as our own. You had capital, goods, even people moving across borders with this incredible freedom. And all of this connection created a powerful, and as it turns out, a very dangerous illusion. The logic seemed so simple, Why would any country start a huge war that would destroy the very system that was making it rich? It was a really comforting idea, that all this shared prosperity had finally tamed the old games of power politics. But it was an illusion that was about to be completely shattered. So World War I, it wasn't just another conflict. You have to understand, it was a fundamental rupture in the actual machinery of globalization. It didn't just hit the pause button on the system, it broke it. Broke it economically and broke it politically. Economically, the damage was just systemic. The war literally dismantled the engine of the global economy. Trade routes were severed, investment just dried up, and governments suddenly seized control of economic life in a way they never had before. The old financial order was left in total ruins. And the political landscape, it was transformed just as dramatically. The war wiped four massive empires off the map: the Austro-Hungarian, the Ottoman, the German, and the Russian. And this just unleashed this wave of new nations, new conflicts, and the rise of mass politics. The old world, the one run by a small elite, it was gone, forever. Now, what happened next is so important to understand. In the 1920s, leaders basically tried to put the old world back together again. They tried to restore that pre-war system, but they were building on foundations that had already crumbled into dust. And you can see the core problem right here. They tried to bring back the old economic rules like the gold standard, which, tied currencies to gold and often demanded really painful budget cuts or austerity. But they were forcing these old rules onto a brand new political reality of mass democracy and powerful unions. People were just no longer willing to quietly accept that kind of pain. And this created a condition that historians call brittle discipline. On the surface, things looked kind of stable for a while. Trade was recovering, money was steady, but underneath, the whole system was incredibly fragile. The economic rules just did not fit the new political world they were living in. And that's the key, right there. This quote just nails it. The leaders of the 1920s were trying to revive the outward form, the ghost, of a system whose real, living foundations, the political and social order, had already died in the trenches of the war. And this, of course, brings us to the Great Depression. This wasn't just a recession, no way. This was the moment that the brittle, restored system finally and completely shattered into a million pieces. It was just this terrifying chain reaction. A financial panic in one part of the world spread like a virus through the entire global system. It toppled banks everywhere, it absolutely gutted international trade, and it caused catastrophic unemployment all across the globe. And this is where you see the dark side of being so connected. Those very same links that had spread prosperity before the war, well, now they became superhighways for contagion. A tightly linked world didn't contain the shock, it amplified it, making the crisis so much deeper and wider than it would have been otherwise. But honestly, the most profound damage wasn't even economic. The Great Depression shattered people's faith in the entire system, in their governments, their banks, and capitalism itself. That loss of faith created a vacuum, and some very dangerous new ideas rushed in to fill it. All that economic pain from the Great Depression, it transformed directly into political radicalization. I mean, it makes sense, right? When the old system can no longer provide work or dignity or even hope, people start looking for alternatives, often any alternative. This reveals such a powerful mechanism. When people are suffering on a mass scale, It creates this huge demand for news stories to explain what went wrong. And these stories are often simple, they're absolute, and they always point fingers. And this just blew the doors wide open for extremism. People turned to leaders who promised a kind of national rebirth by blaming foreigners, by scapegoating minorities, and by rejecting democracy entirely in favor of authoritarian strength. The economic breakdown was fueling a political catastrophe. So, after looking at this entire decades-long collapse, what's the single most important lesson? What's the one thing we really have to take away from all this? This is the absolute core of it. It's a paradox. The problem wasn't a lack of integration. The problem was that economic connection all by itself, without stable political foundations and a sense of social fairness, it's just incredibly fragile. It simply couldn't bear the weight of the world's problems. Just think about it for a second. The economic tools people had were powerless against these deeper forces. Free markets couldn't heal the political wounds left by the war. Rigid financial rules like the gold standard couldn't magically make government seem legitimate again. And no amount of trade could fix the deep despair of mass unemployment. So the indispensable lesson is this: simply wiring the world together economically is not enough. It's not enough to guarantee peace or stability. It has to be built on something much, much stronger. And this leaves us with a really critical question for our own time. In a world that's facing its own new set of global tensions and fractures, we have to ask ourselves, have we really learned the lessons from this first great failure of globalization? Because history shows that the illusion of integration is a very dangerous one indeed.